Well, the first thing is that, our school system and Georgia as a whole is one of the best in the Southeast. Unfortunately, that's not saying much. We need to improve our schools in Georgia. Specifically in Cobb County, we have one of the best school systems in the Southeast, but at the same time, we fail to meet adequate yearly progress every year due to certain portions of the county. And what we need to understand first off is that if someone comes to you and says, well, the problem with schools is X, well, then they don't know the whole problem. All right? They're not seeing the big picture. There are a multitude of issues that need to be addressed in education. First off is the fact that we seem to be treating schools as if they're living on an island. They're not. All right? They are a reflection of the communities that surround them. All right? If the community does poorly, the school does poorly, and vice versa. If a high school does poorly, well, the chances are there's something not just wrong with that high school, but with the feeder program. And the feeder program is the two middle schools underneath it, and the four, five, whatever, what have you, elementary schools underneath that high school, like a triangle. And we need to look at that entire feeder program, and it starts at the bottom. So if you keep having problems at a middle school, well, every year we get a new crop of students. The chances are that there's a problem in those elementary schools. It all actually starts with pre-K. We can fund universal pre-K. We must fund it. Every study has shown that a kid with with pre-K, when they go into kindergarten, has a leg up on those who don't. It starts at the beginning. All right, you need to teach these kids at the beginning. All right. You combine that with the fact that we're actually probably could fund much of it via lottery funds, it's a no-brainer. We also need to bring more power to the teachers. All right, right now, teachers are teaching to the test. They're one of the most highly educated, fields, but at the same time, all the power is stripped away from them from educrats who are based out of Atlanta. We need to give more power back to the teachers. All right, make sure that if the kid passes the CRCT but fails the class, well, the kid's learned something. Now, obviously, he didn't pass the CRCT, and vice versa. If an AB student fails the CRCT, well, then maybe there's something wrong with the test because the child has shown that he can pass. Additionally, we need to make schools a little bit more financially responsible. Okay, they need to take a look at it. One of the things we can do this is to have a national standard for exceptionality. Right now, if a child comes in from out of state and they're gifted or not gifted in their special education, they need to be recertified each time they go to a new school system. I mean, this is a redundant paperwork that just can be settled if we had a national standard for exceptionality. Another thing we need to do is restructure education as a whole. Right now, unfortunately, we look at students every year at the end of the year and decide on whether or not they should be promoted or not. We need to do that more frequently. And kids that need remedial help should be given that remedial help before the end of the school year when it's a time for retention. They need to be given that help as soon as possible. See, unfortunately, our schools aren't designed for large amounts of retention. A lot of people say, oh, well, just leave the kid behind. Well, let him fail. Well, yeah, but the problem is when you have a 17-year-old 8th grader in the same school as an 11-year-old 6th grader, that mix doesn't really work. And then finally, in order to keep for high school retention, to improve our high school retention rates, we need to re-examine the way we're doing things. We're getting rid of vocational technology as a degree. We need to reinstitute that. Not every student needs to go to college, to a 4-year college. Not every student wants to, and that's not a bad thing, right? The final thing is that since schools are a part of community, we need to get the community more involved. Right now, it is the role of the principal to get the community more involved. Well, the principal is busy running what is the equivalent of a mid-sized company. We need those principals working on that, and there needs to be someone within the school whose whole job it is to reach out and pull community members into that school. You can't have it any other way. To get the community members involved, you need to have someone who's out there in that community. Call it a salesman, call it a social worker, call it what you will. There needs to be someone who's getting the community involved. And since the community, it's not a school, since it is a community, and since the schools are a reflection of the community, I'm against school choice, because that would be to abandon the community. And I'm not ready to give up on communities, especially not mine.